Good evening and welcome to BHA Live. It's a pleasure to see you all here on screen tonight. Tonight we're here to talk to you with a bit of a membership update. We'd like to talk to you about the results of the membership survey that we've been doing, and we're going to talk about some of the results and of course give you some ideas on what the next steps will be. First of all, I'd like to just go around the room and introduce who we've got on the panel. So let's start with our regional chairman. We've got Mr. Richard Gardam from Tasmania. I don't know if he's going to appear on screen because there's no noise. Interesting. Okay. We've got Rob Lee from down in Victoria. Hi, Rob. Bill Schrenker from the Central region. Russell Jones from a Western region. And then we've got members of our BHA Council, Mr. Trevor Roots, the Secretary, Trevor Brugger, the Treasurer, Mr. Richard Waddock, VP Events, Daniel Beckett, VP Marketing.
Everyone.
And Paul Adams, our VP Membership, who you'll be hearing from quite a bit later on tonight. So let's talk about the membership survey and where we're up to. Now listen, despite the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic facing Australia and the world, we are continuing to progress with this membership review and the task of developing a full understanding of the issues that are important to you, the members. So what happened? The BHA membership review survey saw over 45% of our membership, so 399 people to be exact, respond, with a really broad cross-section of clubs and age groups involved. And we'll talk more about that shortly. That represents 36 out of the 40 choruses that we currently have registered across Australia. All of our regions were represented in the survey results. So that's a really fantastic thing to see. And rather excitingly for me, 71% of our respondents were over 55 years of age, which was really good. We were, sort of a bit worried that some of our members might be technologically challenged during COVID-19, but it turned out that they weren't. They actually were really, really responsive. So that's good. So what we then did was we analysed the data that came in from the survey results, and we've kind of summarised these the themes of the survey results into 5, we're calling them the big 5, our most important factors for the review. And let me talk you through some of those. Number 1 issue for everybody seems to be a real focus on wanting to attract youth into the organisation and learn about how that might happen. Number 2 was inclusion, and lots of responses about inclusion and welcoming everybody who wants to sing Barbershop. Number 3 was about encouraging men to sing, and that's an important one for us. We need to remember that men are a very underrepresented group when it comes to singing in community groups. It's not something that we traditionally do in a Western culture and in Australia. And so it's still an important focus of the organisation that it encourages men to sing. That was an interesting result. Membership expansion. Hey, who doesn't want to get more members in? Who doesn't want to get more people invited along to share in the joy of Barbershop? And of course, number 5 was a good one for me. It's been my catchphrase throughout my presidency, and it was all about being relevant to our communities. So all of those different answers kind of fell into those 5 broad categories. Now, some of the data from the survey was presented at the BHA online town hall on Friday, the 26th of June. And there's a recording of that on our Facebook page if you want to go back and visit that one. But what we're doing now is we've then moved on to seek individual submissions from BHA members and associates on their perspectives and issues related to the membership review, challenges that we might have to face, concerns, reservations that they might hold, potential solutions for transition and future options, and proposals to address these viable pathways for the future of the organisation. So we're here tonight to give you an update on what we've learned so far, as well as some more detail on what you, the members, have provided in that survey data and the other feedback through forums and research. Now, while we're behind our original time frame, the BHA National Council is still working really hard to progress this review. We know that we promised that we would have a vote at the AGM later this year, but you know that COVID has impacted that heavily. One of the main reasons that it has impacted us heavily is because our primary method of keeping in touch with our members is through the clubs. And because of COVID-19, the clubs haven't been meeting. So it has meant that for many clubs, they're not meeting their members week to week. These conversations aren't occurring week to week, and that's kind of slowed down the whole process because we as an organisation really need everybody to be involved in this. While we've got, 399 total respondents, we'd love to have the whole lot. We'd like to have all 800 respondents join in and have their say and feel heard in this conversation. So 50% of the organisation, that is statistically pretty significant, but we would like to get more. So that's why we're still talking through this. It will take a little time. We don't want to rush things. We want to do it properly so that everybody is supported through this. So it's really important to reiterate that no decisions or outcomes have been reached at this time, all right? Nothing, the council doesn't have any predetermined outcome for this. This is over to the members. And so that's an important thing to keep, I'll keep banging that drum as much as possible. There's no predetermined position. Choice and control remains number one. The members have choice and control over their barbershop journey. That's our catchphrase. And so that's something to keep in mind as we discuss some of the topics tonight. But what I'd like to do is perhaps move over and pass over to Paul Adams, our Vice President Membership, a very skilled gentleman who does this professionally, a lot of organisational skill involved in what he does, and we're very, very lucky to have him on board at BHA. But I might pass over to Paul now. He's got a bit of a presentation that I think we could look through. If you've got any questions, fire them on through the chat section while you're watching, and we'll try and answer those. Remember, we're not going to have all the answers, all right? But we'll try our hardest to make sure that everybody at least gets their questions noted, and we'll carry on with Paul's presentation. And at the end of that, we'll answer as many questions as you like. So now it's over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate the introduction. For those who I haven't yet met out there, and there are a lot of you out there, my name's Paul Adams. I've been involved, started my barbershop journey back in 2012. And back then, I was probably like a lot of people in their careers, working hard, stretched, no time for myself. And I was lucky enough that one of our members from Deep South, who I was working with, was involved in Barbershop. And he reached out to me and said, why don't you come and have a look at this thing? So I did, and I was astounded by what I found. I found an organisation where there was warmth and camaraderie, where what was important was not just me as an individual, but I was as important as everyone else. And I was warmly welcomed into the barbershop community. My first opportunity was to host a couple of members of Alliance, and that was a bit of an eye-opener, of course, as you might imagine. And yet it was a wonderful experience. First convention was 2013, and of course from there I really haven't been able to get away from the organisation. I've just enjoyed it so much. So it's a privilege for me to be on the National Council. I was asked to come on some 4 or 5 years ago now, and my background is in consulting and senior management, and working with surveys for both customer satisfaction, but also climate surveys and culture surveys back as far as 1995. So when it came to this process, it was a case of, okay, what are we going to do to really engage with everyone and make sure everyone has their voice heard? That's why we've developed a survey. That's why we've developed a 5-stage process. And whilst we may have had to modify that slightly on the way through because of the COVID-19 situation, we have been in a position where I think we've got some really rich data and really rich information. So what I'd like to do is to take you through that information now, to give you an understanding of what we've found in the survey, and to talk through some of the themes that I guess we've observed as a council, and really to put those out to you as a membership to say, well, when you look at this survey, what do you see in this information? Do you see the same data in the same way as we do, or do you see something different? We've also been enriched by a range of individual submissions, but also the commentary in the survey. And that's helping us to understand, well, what are the real themes here? So I'm going to just share my screen now, if I can, and we'll have a chat about the BHA survey. Hopefully everyone can see this on their screen now. Thanks to Dan Becker for getting the branding right. That's a really important thing. So Dan has talked about some of this information. The total respondents, we've got a significant response rate. I'm really happy that the vast majority of our choruses have had a chance to respond. We've covered our regions, we've covered our age demographic. we've got 5 big things that are really important. And I just want to talk through those now. Well, actually, I'll talk through those in a minute. Dan mentioned them earlier. So the first thing was, the first question is, how important is this membership for you as a person? And what this is really telling us is that it's actually really important. Yeah, there's 17% that are going, oh yeah, that's fine. But 83% have said it's moderately important, or right through to incredibly important. And 47% of the respondents said this is a really important review for us. We know that this is going to be important for us in our future. And so we're working on that basis that we're not dealing with 10% saying it's important. We're dealing with the vast majority saying this is actually an important review for us. So that's why it's worth us taking the time to get this right. And it's critical that we engage in every conversation on that basis. The first question was, what's your view of the current structure? And there was 3 particular questions in there. One's have gone too far and we need to go back. Some are okay, and then the rest are, they've been good, but we need more. And finally, we need significant change. And 2/3 of our membership have said we actually still need change. We need change to move this organisation forward to a vision that I guess they are embracing. And so these are some of the conversations we've got. There's a number of people, 26%, who are saying, actually, we've come a long way and we're in a good position. But there are still, when we need to recognise that there are still some people that are out there feeling, look, we've strayed from our original roots. We've strayed from what this was about. And I guess that was now, nearly, well, it's 1985. So it's such a long time ago, and the world has changed. And I guess we have been able to continue to adapt and evolve with that. But I think we need to respect the fact that there's still some people that are going, actually, this isn't the place that I joined. And how we're going to manage that through is a really important factor for us. The big 5. So this is a question that we've asked about. What are the 3 most important aspects, just to get a sense of what's going on. The first one was, how do we get youth? I guess we understand we're an aging demographic. And so we want to have people that are attracting youth to want to come and have a try of a cappella, have a try of Barbershop. So part of the things behind that might be that people feeling, oh, well, if we can get inclusion, that it's attractive to youth and that will bring them along. The second part is inclusion. We want to welcome everyone. We shouldn't be an exclusive organisation, and so that's really come through in the survey. The third, we want to encourage membership growth and expansion. So that's really important to us. We want to encourage men to, the third is encouraging men to sing. We are a men's barbershop group right now. And I think part of this, and Jan talked about it, and one of my biggest passions is the fact that if I go to any community chorus, I can find maybe 10% singing. I work in the education system now, and I look at the choirs at schools, and maybe 10 or 15% are boys. Why is that? Why have we marginalised young men so far? And this is one of our challenges, because what we see is that coming out in social problems, in mental health issues, and a range of things. So one of the important things in this is we have to set it in a way which still encourages men to sing. That's still important to us. The fourth one is, how do we build expansion? I guess there's a thought there that if we can encourage members, regardless of with the diversity platform, that will give us an opportunity to do that. And then finally, just being relevant in the community, which I think, I guess we want to explore what that means. But things like inclusion and diversity possibly load into that. And so we'd really like your ideas on what that being relevant in the community is about. As I'm going through this, please feel free to just flick up some questions, get them onto the chat, make sure that we're capturing that so that we can then address them at the end. This is also a club-based issue, because ultimately, how important is the membership review to your club? Similar sort of percentages exist. 87% say it's moderately or more. In fact, half of our membership, over half of our membership to their club, are saying this is really, really important to our club. There's 13% that are going, oh, not so much, and that's okay. They may be in a position where they want to be. But this is why it's such a critical conversation for us. With 80%, 87% saying moderately or incredibly important, it means we must do something about this. With regards to choruses, if your club were to change, which of the following would you wish to pursue? And this is some fascinating sort of information here, because the clubs are saying, well, 47.3% have said we'd be keen to pursue mixed as a chorus level within their clubs. Now that means 53 odd % are saying we're pretty cool with what we've got, but still for a large proportion are saying that the differences, the change in choruses would be around mixed. 8.7% suggesting female only. So still a small proportion of our clubs. So if that reflected in our 40 clubs, then we could expect 3 or 4 might pursue the capacity to have a female chorus associated with them on that basis. Not 40, 3 or 4. And so that's interesting. And I think in the conversations we've had with Sweet Ads, they'll be keen to know about that as well. Regards to quartets, similar sort of numbers. Probably a little bit stronger in terms of quartets, allowing mixed quartets to be part of the individual clubs, and potentially some female-only groups associated with that as well. We had a quick chat about governance, and I've got this here simply because that's the number of the question. And this is really also giving us, I still think, some really interesting information. This is not suggesting that the organisation should break apart. This is suggesting that the organisation should have one BHA council. We may want some specific representation in that. We may want some specific subcommittees, but ultimately, the incredibly vast majority is saying we want to stay as an entity, as a community of barbershop singers that are working together collaboratively to pursue the objectives that were traditionally in place. So that's a really important thing that's been part of our thinking then as we move forward. In competitions, which of the following would you wish for BHA to support? So I've put the 2 questions up here right next to each other. And what we see is that in choruses, we'd like the opportunity for 30% of respondents said we'd be happy to have female-only competitions within our female-only choruses and female-only quartets in our competitions. That's a terrific piece of information for us. I mean, fascinating, isn't it, when we think back to the clubs saying maybe 10% would be interested in having female associated with them, but there seems to be, in this question, potentially a broader, more openness to have females as a category within our overall competitions. Mixed similarly is strong. Male-only competitions are still dominant. Probably that's a little bit of self-interest there, given that we are predominantly a male organisation. But it is certainly opening up to saying we're happy to have competitions at a chorus and quartet level which embrace more categories than our traditional open category. Then when we look below that, this question was about what about having open seniors, youth and schools? And again, in all cases, over 60% in all cases are saying we want all of those categories available. So it's a pretty strong recommendation. And of course, the strongest one is open. And we have to talk about what open means in the future. But they're saying there's capacity to have a broader open category within each of those competitions is important to us. To what extent should we align with International Barbershop Organisation's membership? One was completely, the second one was partially. Select the bits that make sense to us. The third option was we can just go our own way, who cares what they do? And then the other was all the others. 87.3% have indicated that a broader alignment is really important. And particularly we've seen this with things like representation at internationals and those sort of things. A smaller percentage, somewhere about 24% have said we should be absolutely aligned to BHS, but that's a slight difference there. Maybe that's the Australian way coming through. Yeah, we're happy to listen to what other people are doing, but we're actually going to do what's right for us. And I think that's a pretty a pretty wise sort of statement for us going forward. And a ringing endorsement where over nearly 2/3 of our membership are saying, hey, let's do the stuff that we want to do for us, thanks. We don't have to be a slave to what's going on somewhere else. And this is then just some of the demographics, because one of the things we were worried about is that this methodology of capturing information would somehow favour those who are only been here a little while or favour those who are particularly younger. And what this shows is that 64% of the respondents have been with us for 6 years or more. In fact, we've got a 5 or 6% have been here for more than 30 years. That gives me some confidence that we've got information that ranges across the depth of knowledge of our entity, of our organisation. It's not been skewed to a particular group at the expense of another group. What type of membership do we hold? We'll go figure. Most of them are full memberships. Associate memberships form the rest of the balance. That's a good thing for us to know as well, because this is now a response that come out of the members that actually ultimately are going to go to an AGM or a special general meeting and vote for whatever the future of this organisation will look like, because they're the ones in the Constitution now have that right, and that's where this response has come from. Age range, Dan mentioned this. This is generally pretty responsive to our demographic, and maybe that's part of the original Big Five. 71% are over the age of over 55 years of age. And unfortunately, I put myself in that situation. I didn't discover Barbershop until I was over 50. I wish I'd discovered it when I was 35 or 25 or 18. Well, it didn't exist back then, just after dinosaurs roamed the earth. Okay, so followingly, we've got then a range of other questions. People are participating in these things now. They're male and quartet members. Male quartet are the predominant activities. There's a group of people, up to 20%, who are participating, who've responded to the survey, who are also actively participating mixed. Some of them are involved in other non-barbershop stuff. Some of them are involved in other musical groups. So it's really good that we've got information from people who have seen outside our organisation as well, looking in, as well as those who have been inside for quite some time. Okay, so this is our key themes, and this is one of our critical points. From all of that survey data, what we then had to do is say, okay, what's going on here? What is this telling us with all the individual responses, with all of the numerical responses, with all of the individual submissions? And these are the themes that I guess we've taken out of it as a council that we need now to test with you as a membership. We think this is telling us that the majority of respondents support a move to a more inclusive membership association. That's a really important point for us to make sure we understand. A lot of the individual responses are saying in today's environment, it's inappropriate for females to only be associates, that it's inappropriate for us not to be inclusive. And that's really what the survey has told us, is that a large number of our respondents have said, it's time for us to do this. And so this is a key theme that we now need to explore with our clubs to say, okay, we've heard the survey, what do you say on this? The second part is that clubs must have the choice to determine what groups they wish to facilitate. This is not you must all have all of these factors. It's been quite clear in the information that's come to us that clubs want the choice to determine what groups and how they're going to structure to do that. So that's really important. We need to facilitate that and be really clear up front as we move forward that that must be a key part of whatever constitution we end up with, if that's what the membership wants. Strong theme that's come through is all members should have equal voting rights. If we're going to head down this path, the concept that there are different classes of citizens is considered inappropriate across the board. So that's another really important thing. What does that mean then for our governance and those things? But we do know that our governance should remain as one council for all. that we're not looking to split up, to fracture, to change all those things, that we're still saying that as part of this, we still want to respect all of the groups that are going to be involved. At this time, traditional gender groupings are still strongly supported, because one of the questions that have come through this is, we know today it's a different environment, and we used to talk about gender as being very fixed and very solid and all that stuff, and we know it's not. And these are one of the challenges we've got. But at this time, we are seeing traditional gender groupings for both involvement and competition still being strongly supported as wanting to be carried through at this stage. On the other side of that, open is both a fully inclusive grouping and a category of all subgroupings. So it seems that we want an open competition where, for example, every quartet, that if we go to a competition, their score is what determines whether they win that open category. Similarly, they want that category within subgroupings. So there may well still be an open, a seniors, a youth, or a school in any one of the subgroupings that we deal with. So we've got to look at what does that mean and how does that work forward.
Paul, we've just got a question on the board from Nick.
Sure.
Talking about number 5 while we're here, before we get too far away from it, because I think it's an important point. But Nick says that number 5 says that the traditional gender groupings are strongly supported, and he's interested to know, is that an accurate, an appropriate generalisation, given that almost 40% didn't want to see a men's contest at all?
No, so I think the question then, I think it's great. It's a good question. Thanks, Nick. If we're talking about the earlier thing about what competition should be provided, ultimately what that question asked was, which ones do you think should be in place? The fact that 60% said we want a men's is what we're talking about. And I guess that's where the majority of this thing comes in. If 60% are saying we want a men's, others want open, others want mixed, is 60% enough to say that the gender groupings are supported? My question, my proposition back would be, what would that need to be before it becomes a case where we're saying, no, we don't want all of those categories? Because right now we do have them. And if we went back to that question, I think we'd find that we're looking for a range of those things. If it was down at 20%, I don't think we would have come up with that as a question. We would have said, well, 80% of our people want only open, they don't want the other categories. But at this stage, there still is a fairly significant group, say, that we actually do want to have these other things for the time. But I think that's a great conversation for us to open up with the individual clubs to say, okay, that's what we took out of it. Let's talk to the individual clubs. Let's talk to the individual members. Have we misunderstood what they were telling us in that? You happy with that, Dan? Does that, or do you have any other further thoughts from the council?
Nick says, fair enough. He was just uncomfortable with the word strongly.
So I'll just go back a little bit. I'll jump out of Barbershop for a moment. In terms of general standards associated with surveys, climate surveys, I think once we tend to get into the 75% range, we're going absolutely, it's definitely there. Anything into the 60s, the 2/3, we tend to go, look, that's significant enough to take notice of. Particularly when it's 2/3 for. If we're getting more than 25% against, we're also taking notice of that. That means there's a fairly significant cohort that aren't on board with what you're saying. So I think that's why Nick's question is a really good one, is to go, okay, what does that mean for us? And we actually, let's go back out there and test this, because this isn't the end of the conversation. This is kind of in the middle, in the early stages of it. And so I'm sure we've got that one noted, and we'll make sure that's a part of the conversations when we go out to clubs. The other side of that one then is that open is absolutely supported. This conversation that seems really strongly, and beyond that, is that if we are going to have mixed, male, female, whatever it is, the higher scoring of those quartets, for example, should be our champion. They should be considered in the open category. And so hopefully that's the other side of that question. Competitions with full subcategories are supported for all gender mixes. We saw that as well. attracting youth is absolutely critical for us. And I think this is going to be another really interesting conversation for us. Are mixed quartets, are mixed environments going to attract more young men to sing? Or do we need to provide a blend of that? How do we deal with that? Because ultimately, encouraging men to sing is still a thing, regardless of what this membership review does. What we see, one of our accountabilities coming through this is that if we just set up another community chorus where 10% of men, we've missed the boat. Somehow, I think we have carriage of that as an organisation, given our background. But again, happy to talk about that. There'll be different philosophies, different ideas, and it's really then how do we take all those ideas and put them into the future about delivering youth, delivering young males into singing, and what's the best environments for that. There are some really hot topics as well. The hot issues, like how do we capture all this in competition rules? And we know that there's a real challenge for that if we want to have competitions with all those. If we had all of those environments, how would we facilitate that in a festival? Another great sort of issue, because it's all very well to say we're going to do a particular thing. We then got to say, well, pragmatically, how will we implement that? Number 3 was that really interesting question around how do we manage full inclusivity if we are using the constraint of traditional genders? And this is one where certainly I don't have the answers for that. We've got to go out to the members and talk that through, and to see if we can find the balance in there which allows us to move forward to those environments. Can we have categories which allow full inclusivity while still providing for other environments is the issue here. How to communicate any changes from this process to target the big 5? It's all very well for us to say these are the 5 really important issues, and now we've done this membership review. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Well, that's great. Now we've got to action. What are we doing to actually improve in the big 5? So this must cause some form of strategic response from Barbershop Harmony Australia and from all of our clubs if we're going to head down this pathway. What are the risks of whatever path we identify? At some point we're going to have to lock down on something, and we need to be able to do that, understanding what that could mean in terms of the risks to the organisation. It could fracture it, it could weld it together. We don't know yet. We need to think that stuff through and in a respectful way work our way through that to make sure that we minimise the risks that we've got whilst moving forward on whatever agenda we decide. Finally, how do we engage all the members in the decision? Because we've got about 399 responses, and then we've got a range of individual responses. Our concern is that still leaves half the members out there who haven't responded. And the last thing we want to do is get to a point where we're going, we want to have a special general meeting on this, and people going, hold on a second, I haven't heard about this. That cannot happen. We must find a way to engage all of our members. And so that's some of the conversation back with the members as well. And I'm going to say that's a bit of an accountability for every member in this organisation. How are you engaging with everyone to make sure they are a part of this conversation? Finally, some next steps. How do we get the feedback from the survey? What have missed? And next question's a great question straight away. Hold on, have we seen something in the wrong way there? Have we missed something in that conversation?
Paul, we might just jump back before we go to the next steps, if you don't mind. I've got a couple of good questions on the board here. We've got one here, and this is probably something we declined, we sort of neglected to do at the beginning of the session, but it's to, I guess, David has asked the question, what do we mean by full inclusivity? And we need to define what's meant by the term inclusivity, as it's been referenced a couple of times now, and it's in the list of hot issues. And so what is it that we're talking about? I noted that there was another comment here where somebody's talking about whether that applies to an audition process and a skill level for singers. And that's kind of not what we're talking about at the moment. No. What we're talking about is from a membership perspective. But do you have some words to add to that?
So from a membership perspective, this is full inclusivity is talking about, we know what the traditional male, female, gender roles are and all those sort of things. And those things have been, well stereotyped and well described. But what we do have, and we're aware of now, is that there's a lot of people out there who don't necessarily go, I'm male or I'm female. They are, their gender is what we would call non-binary. They are neither this nor that. They are this or this. And so those traditional stereotypes of this is what a guy looks like and this is what a gal looks like, which is traditional in our language, it's traditional in the way we operate, are the sorts of things which in 2020, communities and organisations are grappling with and saying, actually, when we do that, do we inadvertently and without intent exclude people? Do we inadvertently and without intent make someone feel like they're not valued in this organisation? These are the sorts of things we're talking about, because we do want to be an inclusive organisation. We want to be an organisation which does welcome people to us. And these are the sorts of conversations which are coming through in the survey results. And we're not the only organisation grappling with those things. But that's where that deeper conversation needs to come from. By all means, I encourage every member, jump on the web and do your own research around, what does it mean to be fully inclusive as an organisation? Because I think that will enrich our conversation.
I think that's a really good point, Paul. And it is really important to keep mentioning that BHA is not the National Council. It's not the guys that you see on screen right now. BHA is all clubs and all members. And we are here just to represent the views of those clubs and those members. The decisions that are made by the membership will be reflected by the BHA Council. But it's just really important to note that the council isn't BHA. We are working for BHA. Look, we've got another question here too from Ian Mulholland. We're going to go back, Paul, if you don't mind, we'll go back to questions 15 and 16 on those slides.
Yeah.
Ian's asking a question here about, he's talking about, there's no doubt that girls attract boys when it comes to, this sort of barbershop stuff. And we talked about attracting youth, and we know that, that's a key driver in attracting youth, is having the opposite sex engaged. So we know that mixed groups need to have a good representation of male and female. But Ian talks about the previous guideline of having at least 40% of one gender or the other, because less than that, say 90% female and 10% male, is kind of really just a female group with a token number of males in it. Have you got any comments on that?
I guess my response to that would be from my observations in education, and that is that there's a time when when young men can feel vulnerable enough to stand up in front of a girl and sing their heart out. And what we want is more young men to do that. Does that mean that the 10% of males who are brave enough, courageous enough, don't give a rat's enough to do that in front of in a chorus of 90% females are just our most courageous? Maybe they are.
Yeah.
For me, it's about, we talk about marginalisation in a range of different contexts. And if we saw any other stat where we saw only 10% participation from the gender that makes up 50% of our community, we would go, that's an outrage. And yet we seem to accept it in a community choir that that's okay, that's what it is about.
Yeah.
So for us as an organisation, if we are going to talk in this space, we've got to come to terms with exactly Ian's question. What does make up a genuinely mixed chorus versus what really is a supplemented chorus that really is a majority gender? Now that could have some implications for us depending on how we see that about the way we set it up. We could end up saying, if you've got less than 10%, it's going to be able to compete in this competition. We could do that. They're conversations for the membership to
Absolutely,
work their way
Paul,
through.
and I think it is really, really important to note that this was a specific answer to a question that we asked about what would people support, in this respect. Just remember, there's a large part of work, a massive body of work to be done based on any membership decision on the future of the membership. Once the membership decides they'd like to go in any specific direction, we would then, as an organisation, need to do things like work out the contest rules. What does that mean? What does it look like on the contest stage? What does it mean for the, the constitution of clubs and how people work their day-to-day singing, as well as their contest stuff. So there's a whole lot of other work that needs to go on. Don't think that just because this survey result says that it's supported that we're going to just ram through and do stuff, because there's a lot of other work that needs to occur. Avril's got a really good point here. It's important. We are talking a lot about male and female, and that's kind of the hot topic that we have been asked a lot about. But Avril's got a really good point to note that inclusion is not just about male, female. It's not about just sex or sexuality. It's also related to things like disability and culture and religion and age and all that sort of stuff. And when we look at the survey results that we've got here, we've got people of all abilities, all cultures, all religions, and all ages who have been involved in this. And so, it's important that inclusion and inclusivity. It's important that you understand those terms to mean, everything. Russell has asked the question here: if BHA is fully inclusive, would the clubs have to be fully inclusive as well? Once again, it's down to choice and control for each singer and each club. But I would like to think that we are nice people and we can include everyone in what we love to do, knowing that they'll love it too. So just an interesting comment there, Russ. Agree with you, mate. All right, Paul, sorry, mate, to interrupt you there. We've cleared the board a little bit.
No worries.
So John Webb's just asked one more question here. What of other gender groupings, such as LBQ, etc., and inclusion principles? It's not something, we didn't ask people for preferences and stuff during the survey. It's not something that we were interested in particularly. So we haven't got that answer for you, John. Would that be fair, Paul?
Yeah, I don't think we've got the answer for that, and there's a whole raft of complexity around that whole question as well.
Yeah. However, a lot of submissions that we've received recently do touch on some of these topics, and so there's certainly things that we're considering, but not something that was part of the survey result.
Yep. So again, a good one for us to just capture and to consider as we're going around talking to our clubs as part of our next steps. So if we move to our next steps, if we're happy to go to there, what we've identified then is we need some feedback. We need the feedback from people. So that can be an open email feedback straight back to me at VP membership. What have we missed? What makes sense? What resonated? Did we think about? All of these things we now want to capture and gather. And the people who've joined in with us tonight, you're really at the forefront of us understanding this stuff, because you've now got a level of understanding and seen this information. We are going to have the survey available on the website so people can dive into it a bit and have a look at each of the questions. There's nothing hidden in that. The open responses won't be available because they could tend to identify individuals, but all of the numerical data will absolutely be available. Meeting with every chorus to gather feedback and intentions. Gee, wouldn't that be great if we could do that? We're trying to work out how to do that. And it might end up being, a face-to-face with some and a Zoom with others. But ultimately, we want to be able to go and get a National Council member in front of every chorus through some form to say, hey, talk to us about this. What questions do you have? What's your feedback? What are your intentions? And what are you suggesting we should be doing as a organisation? The idea is that we want to finalise all those intentions and propose them at the AGM to say, okay, this is where we think we're going. Do you want us to head in this pathway? And then if there are changes that come from that intention, that we then draft up whatever constitutional changes are required and whatever rules that might need to be modified, and that they are ratified at a special general meeting. I've suggested March is our target. That may be ambitious, but that would be terrific, because then if there are any knock-on implications to competitions, we've got them sorted by then. But we've probably got a little bit of wriggle room in that one if we needed to just facilitate something. Once that happens, we'd then enact our changes to the membership structures, and we'd be able to enact our changes in any regional competitions, or potentially even for our next Barbershop Harmony Australia Festival, which is scheduled for the Gold Coast. So that's what our intentions are in terms of moving this information forward. So again, happy to see if there's any questions at this time about those or other next steps that people would suggest. Things that we might have missed. So Dan, have you got anything for us? Is that or have we landed?
Sorry, mate, I've just had a little technological issue there.
Good.
What happened? I seem to freeze. Richard Reeves says, is it a correct statement that a fully inclusive organisation
with regards to
gender, is that gender is not a factor in joining, specifically not just that it's a male-only organisation. We don't just invite women to join, also people who don't identify as either. So simply gender is not a factor in being able to join.
Yep. And certainly that's been a strong theme out of the survey. We want people to be able to join. We don't give a rat's whether you're male, female, or what your race is, how you identify. All of those things become irrelevant to the joining of this organisation. That is what we would take from the current results that we have.
Agreed.
Oh, got something from David too.
David, thank you, mate. Welcome, welcome in from Adelaide there. David says changes for flow-on for festival categories will need to be in place for the regionals. March decision will be too late for it to have an effect for September event. Lots of love. It's a good point. We will try and have as much done as possible as we can. By obviously, March will still give us time to bring things into place for the regional events, should they be occurring in April next year. Richard Waddick, VP Events, have you any thoughts to add into that process as well?
Oh, I'm unmuted. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, look, I think probably come after Christmas, certainly no later than March, decisions will need to be made about regional contests and impacts of that on national convention. But I mean, usually we would plan well ahead for regional contests and have it strapped up by Christmas anyway. So I think we'd have to be in a position fairly early in the new calendar year, and then let the membership know what the prospects were for competition at that time. So so look, I'd say probably early January. We'll need to broadcast a decision about that.
One thing I might note is that in anticipation of the PAM packs and what we had there, we had already facilitated some capacity to get scores for qualification for various things for groups that didn't exist within the BHA competitions anyway. So, I mean, one of the good things about that is that I think maybe Nick's already identified it. We do it for invitationals already. If it all locks into place and that's the way we go, and that then really hopefully the capacity for us to then lock that into a formal structure shouldn't be too difficult. It shouldn't be without some experience in doing those sorts of things anyway.
Good
Chat's
one.
going mad.
It is, which is really good to see. And listen, we're going to try and answer some of these things as best we can. Given that we're off the cuff here, some of them might be a little clumsy, so do forgive us. We will do our very, very best, but we'll also keep a record of all of these, and these will form part of the process that we're undergoing. We have a good comment here that talks from Alex Anderson through Facebook. Thanks, Alex. We're talking about the LGBTQIA plus, that there weren't any particular specific questions in the survey, but that doesn't mean that we can't make proper efforts to be more inclusive for current members and for potential members. And it shouldn't be too hard in 2020 for dialogue in clubs and rehearsals to not be heteronormative. And look, Alex, good comment. And it's something that we've actually just been speaking about quite recently and a few times is, you know, I think regardless of any future membership option, I think it's just polite to teach us guys what it means to be inclusive in the language that we use. And we were talking about the hello, ladies and gentlemen kind of greeting that we would normally use for an event like this. And I hope you noted that that wasn't a thing. What we're trying to do is normalize non-gender specific language in what we do here. So, and I know it's a small step, but look, yes, proper efforts could be more inclusive. And I don't think, to be honest though, I don't think they're big efforts in many ways. I think we can do a lot of small things that would have a relatively good impact. So that's one for you. Rob makes a comment here about would the mixed category cover the gender issue? And that's another thing that we've still yet to determine as far as contests go. But one comment I would make is traditionally in BHA, the winner of the Open Trophy was still a group of men. The Open Quartet was still 4 men. The Open Chorus was still a men's chorus. So I think what we need to do, you know, supporting again with Alex's comment, the language that we use is something that we can certainly think about and adjust. So perhaps there is space in future contests that the open winner is actually an open winner, the winner of everything, whether that's, you know, men's, seniors, youth, female, mixed, whatever that is, the best singers on the day can win the open prize. I think that would make sense, but again, there's work to be done in that space. Avril, thanks again for another comment. Avril says she appreciates that we should be gender blind in focusing on membership, but in terms of improving the binary balance, should there not be a focus on improving women's and non-male participation in line with the general binary gender breakdown of the overall population? I think that's a really good comment. I will bring it back to one of the key survey results is that men are traditionally underrepresented in what we do. And so we need to maintain that focus as well as what you're saying, Avril. I think that would be unfair to just, there are plenty of, you know, other avenues to focus on improving women's and non-male participation, but we need to maintain that as a focus as well as what we're trying to do here, perhaps. But that's, again, a great piece of feedback. Remembering that we're not going to rush into this, you know, we really want to get this right. And so that's why we're taking our time to understand all of this stuff. Nick Sherman's comment, is the existence of invitational contests at regionals relevant to this question? What do we think?
I think that was partly the question of, well, how would we bring this into fruition if we're doing the special general meeting in March?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm going to comment on each of these because I just think they're really good. Richard Reeves says, you know, that Avril has a great point. Or do we just want more people to sing? So yes, I think that would be great. If we suddenly end up with 10,000 barbershoppers in Australia, what a great position to be in. You know, boy, oh boy, we'd be thrilled to bits. We will also maintain, you know, some sort of a focus though on encouraging men to sing. You know, given that the traditional underrepresentation of white Australian males who are currently engaged in that sort of an activity, in that sort of a hobby. Avril says, if full membership for all is decided upon at the AGM, would there be targets set for improving overall numbers of members and also gender groups, people with disability, people like LGBTQIA and things like that? So I think perhaps a little early at this stage. I don't think we'd be setting targets. I think we are still a relatively small organisation. The target would be that we have 0 people who are very unhappy. I think that might be a good target. Let's work at the other direction, huh?
And the question I might put into there, Dan, is it might not be that we do targets, but at least it might be we've got some particular strategies or some interventions. So, you know, for example, wouldn't it be great to do something around Australia with Barbershop Harmony Australia on World Harmony Day? You know, those sorts of things that really speak to the communities about our inclusiveness.
Good one. Angelina, hello, how are you? Angelina says, with all states in different stages of COVID and being able to sing, has the National Council considered having regional comps or not next year? Trust us, it's something that we're looking at all the time. We're also looking at the National Convention, sorry, the National Festival in September next year on the Gold Coast. We've got our eye on it on a weekly basis. Yes, we're trying to do as best we can in keeping above that. Obviously, COVID is beating us at the moment. So we'll just watch this space and see. I hope that answers your question. Richard says, is there going to be a goal for there always going to be a male chorus for men looking for that? Just wouldn't want to miss a new member who was looking for that, but perhaps there's micromanagement from council. I think you're probably right, Richard. It might be each local community can decide what sort of choruses, each club can decide what sort of choruses and performing groups they want to put together. I think, again, we fall back to choice and control. What else have we got here? Have I covered them all, boys?
Pretty much.
All right, keep the questions coming, guys. This is a really good bit of feedback we're capturing here, and I'm enjoying it very much. It's a gold. All right, well, we might have exhausted the questions for now. What I do want to remind you, though, is that we are all just at the end of an email. We are still seeking your feedback, comments, suggestions, insults, threats, anything that you want to send through, we will use as part of our considerations and deliberations in trying to work out what the membership has presented to us. So please do keep your emails and comments coming on through. Facebook, email, jump on our website. We're not fussy. Anything that you want to send through will be included. Paul, you might talk us through the next steps just one more time. I know that initially our next step was that we would have something for the members to vote on by the AGM this year. Firstly, I want to make the comment that just because we missed this year's AGM doesn't mean everybody has to wait for another year for it to happen. We have the capacity to stand up at a special general meeting for the membership to jump along and vote on at any time. So all is not lost. COVID might have beaten us out of a convention, but it's not going to beat us out of making sure that this process is done properly. So there you go. Richard, will there be more opportunities for this style of town hall discussion? It seems like this is flushing out lots of ideas. Boy, oh boy, I find them really useful and a really good focus on getting us together and getting some of these ideas out on the table. So yes, the answer is yes. Would Sweet Adelines Australia see us as encroaching on their market if BHA was to be encouraging female members? Important to note that we have met with our colleagues in Region 34, Sweet Adelines Australia, and discussed this process. There is no encroachment on their territory. They understand that what we are doing here is moving with the times and, you know, asking our membership what they would like to do rather than us seeing this as a free season to try and garner more membership and steal their members. I think that realistically there are people who were Sweet Adelines and perhaps even people who were members of Barbershop Harmony Australia who no longer are because of the segregation, I guess, that was historically occurring. You know, husbands wanted to sing with wives or boyfriends with girlfriends or whatever it is. And there are people who may be interested in coming back to an organisation that could include them. So there's some of that, but that's not taking members from Sweet Adelines Australia. We have dual members. We have associate members of BHA and full members of Sweet Adelines already. It's not really a threat seen by Sweet Adelines, and there's no threat intended by BHA. I hope that answers that question. What else we got? Thank you, David. Very polite. Thank you very much. Cool. All right. So that puts us just about out of time. Paul, do you want to back us through those next steps?
Yeah, so just quickly talking you through them, will give us the feedback on this presentation. What have we missed? We will then be reaching out to meet with every chorus for feedback and intentions over the next month or so. We'll finalise our intentions and we'll propose them at the AGM. And then if that suggests we are going to move forward, if the membership as a whole are saying, yes, this is the direction we want you to take, we would then put in place the work to be done to formalise what that would mean in terms of constitution, which would be drafted for ratification at a special general meeting I guess the objective is in the first quarter of next year. And that's when we'll then need to enact all the membership structures and changes. And that could take the rest of the year to put in place. But what it should do is remove any barriers to the sorts of objectives that come out of the constitutional changes. It's still challenging. We're still hopeful that nothing's going to happen with this pandemic, which will set us back. We're still hopeful that we can keep using these lines of communication. Thanks for everyone for your particular involvement tonight. It's been really useful for me to understand and given me some great opportunities for reflection. So thank you so much.
It's been really, really useful. Thank you, Paul, for all the work you're putting into this. Thank you, all council members, for all the work that you're putting in behind the scenes. Thank you very much for all of our attendees tonight. Thanks to everybody who asked questions and made comments. Really great stuff. We will do these again and quite regularly. So thank you very, very much and good night.